If you preach a message and you were to ask someone 1 hour, 1 day, or 1 week afterwards what it is that you spoke about, what you taught them in your preaching, do you think that they would remember? Well, in this tutorial video, we're talking to Ian Mayhew, who is an expert at using creative engagement to help people remember and grow as you teach them the Bible. Hi, my friends. Welcome to Word Made Digital Tutorials. My name is Joanna LaFleur, and this tutorial we are talking to my friend Ian Mayhew. Ian is a brilliant expert at how to do creative engagement in sermons, in communication of scripture and teaching, and ultimately how to disciple people through memorable ways to engage them with scripture. So Ian he's been a pastor, he's a discipler, he's led all kinds of ministries that raise up young people in their faith. He's done all kinds of things. He's a bit of a jack of all trades, but one of the things I've known him for and been deeply impacted by him in my own life is how he leads times of scripture and prayer through memorable tools and activities. And he's going to give us some of his ideas for creative ways for you to have memorable, applicable, and sermons that really stick with people past Sunday, past the weekend service, and long into the days, weeks, and months ahead. So thank you so much to the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities for making these tutorials possible. We wouldn't be able to do it without them. I can't wait to tell you a little bit more about them at the end. And here is my conversation about sermons that stick with Ian Mayhew.
You know, if you're doing talks, you want to try and get some engagement beyond the PowerPoint or beyond the yes and no. So I guess one of the things that we try to do is to, rather than just trying to produce a lot of things, either on paper or in some other kind of medium, is just have a think about what are people already carrying with them. So that's led us to a few different ideas and some quite exciting sort of ways of utilizing that. So you've got, obviously, hopefully people are wearing shoes, so interacting with that, or you've got keys, or you've got, change, money in your pockets. So utilizing those sort of things can be quite helpful and quite a nice skill. Gary's done some great stuff with the money. He did a good exercise of people using the money they had in their pockets.
I think the money's quite an interesting one because it's also almost a little bit awkward to suddenly talk about how much money people got in their pockets. And this was pre-COVID, so this was a time when people had change and coins and things which people used to spend around. And we had everyone together in this event. And me and Ian had spoken about this before and reflecting what people might have at this event and coming to it. And it was the first thing we did. And it was a prayer gathering. It's about sort of 120 people. And we just recommended that people would go into their pockets, they'd find some change, and this is in English currency, so this was up to the value of 50p. So about like $1, like find some coins up to about that. And then what people were challenged to do is to go around the room and to give this money to somebody in the room and to just give it with a blessing, to introduce themselves, say hi, and then to give them the money. And they could choose however little, however much. And just to get this new interaction going. And so we had all these people, as you can imagine, like awkwardly like going around, and there was then jokes we could make afterwards of like, oh, who looked the neediest, like who ended up with the most money, or like who actually who didn't have any money but now has some, and all these different stories off it. And it was just a great kind of connection, interaction tool. The beautiful thing was like later that evening, we had someone come up to us. And this person said, held up a 2p coin. So this is just like 1 cent basically, and just came up holding this 2p coin. And he was just sort of saying, like, I have a problem. And we were like, oh no, has this person started with 50p? And now he's coming to us with this 2p coin, like devastated that he's lost 48 pence and it's our fault. What a terrible like interaction tool engagement for communicating this like welcome activity and getting people understanding about giving and receiving and just all the different natures that happen when you come to a conference, because people bring something to share. It's not just a consuming culture. So we were sharing all these ideas and we thought this guy's devastated. And then he was just like, actually, the problem is this 2p was just on the floor in front of me. And we're like, okay. And he said, this was worth, he was like, I'm a coin collector. I know how much this is worth. This is a rare 2p. This is worth about £200. like 200 English
Wow.
pounds. And he was like, so I have a problem because I don't know whose this is. Like, I don't know who to give it back to, but this is a really valuable coin. And we just had this profound moment in the evening when we shared this, and someone just echoed of like, actually, I think God's speaking through this. And somebody feels like they've come just with this tiny bit of money, just this tiny offering, and it just isn't worth anything, and it's not as much as everyone else, and it's just this small thing. And they're just like, I think God's saying to someone in this room that actually their tiny offering is worth so much more than they can imagine.
Wow.
And what I love about that is that obviously me and Ian have spoken about this, and there's other experiences Ian's had, but you take a really simple idea like that, you get it going, and actually then the activity created one of the most significant teaching points that echoed throughout the weekend, which wasn't planned, it wasn't what the activity was for, but just in engaging of it and releasing it, it enabled an incredible learning experience. So that's always one which I think when me and Ian talk about kind of what people have in their pockets, I think that's definitely one we return to, just knowing how an idea can go from just a limited opportunity you think it might give to actually a massive opportunity for people to hear something new, which wasn't planned.
Such a cool story, that. When you told me that, Gary, it's brilliant. I think it's the same thing with keys, isn't it? We've used keys before, which is really nice. You know, people have got a bunch of keys on them, and sort of thinking about it as a prayer kind of pointer, really, or as a rosary, if you like. You know, just sort of thumbing through your keys. Got your car key, got your house key, you maybe have work keys or those sort of things. And just having a think about, as you kind of hold that key, what's going on in your home at the moment? What's going on at work? Where are you driving? That sort of stuff. And so it's not just something that can happen in the service, but it kind of even may revolutionize the way you hold your keys on a day-by-day basis, thinking I'm carrying in a prayer. You know, I'm taking these prayers with me into these places and spaces. So I think that's very powerful. We've also handed out additional keys to people. You know, that's quite a nice thing in a service. Keys that have been uncut. It's just kind of symbolic of promises and sort of prophetic ways in which there are some doors that are yet to be opened, that God may be wanting to call you into. So, you know, attaching that to your set of keys is quite a nice thing. It kind of gives a sense of something to pray for. It means that it doesn't just remain in the service. It goes beyond that as well, or the meeting, or whatever you would call the place that you're in. So the rest of the week you're using your phone, and the last 5 messages you sent, you know, who were those to? And let's just spend 2 or 3 minutes praying for those people, those messages that you sent, you know, the recipient of those. And just kind of doing a little bit of a check back on that, a little bit perhaps confession and stuff on that as well with your phones. You know, it's such a powerful tool, but you can sort of, again, utilize that in a very interesting sort of way. And then whether it's coat, keys, coins, that sort of stuff, you are taking those beyond the service. So I think it hopefully adds as a prompt for some of the teaching that people might be doing in their services.
Okay, tell us about the shoes. I think I interrupted you when you were going to tell us about. I like I like some of the things you've done with shoes too.
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, there are those sort of classic stories of, I forget the name of the person who inserted something into their shoe just to kind of cause them some discomfort and dissonance and disruption, I guess. And every time doing that, it was a reminder of something they were praying for. We've given people marker pens, and they write on the sole of their shoe a word or a theme that they're praying in and around their local area. That was to send people out on a prayer walk, and you kind of, as you're walking, that word is being eroded into the streets and the places that you're walking on. And so it's kind of symbolic of bringing that prayer in a physical way to that neighbourhood and those people. So that's, you know, it's quite fun, but it's also actually a very powerful thing to consider. What words am I bringing? What themes am I bringing into the area that I live? That's been good, actually. There's some really good feedback from that sort of thing. The other thing I found, and this is perhaps slightly more, but I found it as a really helpful way of interacting people is in the scripture itself. Normally that has been very individualized. You've got your own Bible or your own bulletin or the PowerPoint or whatever. But we've experimented writing that scripture that you're using out in a really large way. I've used wood for that before, and so that's, the passage written out or on a big scroll of paper, butcher paper, I think you would call it, or lining paper we would call it, and then just roll that down the floor, and then getting people to, with a marker, to underline words or phrases which are kind of useful for them. And I think that's a great way of sort of doing sort of public exegesis in a way. You're sort of, everybody's getting involved in the passage. You're sort of thinking, it's very interesting to sort of view it afterwards. What is some of the words and themes that are becoming, have been underlined multiple times by a congregation? And what is that saying about this congregation? What is it saying I need to sort of teach into? So it's a really nice way, I think, of getting that Bible reading to come alive and everybody to actually start to engage with it in a new way. You need a bit more there than that. You need a roll of paper.
No, I love it. I think it's the whole point of the conversation is helping to make scripture or a teaching point come to life, be memorable to people, go with them, use more of their senses, because whether we're online, video teaching or it's in person, so much is just eyes and ears being activated. But we have 5 senses, and so how do we use more of those senses? You've had stuff that I've done with you where there's fire involved and we've burned things and you can smell the ashes. I mean, there's just so much opportunity to do interaction. And I mean, obviously now you're taking a whole master's program towards this end of how to, Mountain Man Ian, how to get outside and get involved and get your feet out there, your hands dirty in what we're learning. It's awesome.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hope so. I mean, I hope the sort of, we all learn, I guess, in different ways or in a multiple sort of ways. And so I think if it's just audio, then that may well be powerful, but we may be missing some things with others. So it's looking at the multiple ways in which people do tend to sort of learn. So how can we go about that? And what resources can we find within our congregation to help us do that? Which I think can be very, very exciting and can be revolutionary for people. So yes, I'm hoping to learn more and more about that. In fact, we just did a fire pit the other day with a group of people, and normally I've just, loads of people use fire pits, and they're a great storytelling, conversational place, aren't they? And you can use it in multiple different ways. But for the first time ever, we created this sort of approach to the fire pit. So stopped people about, 20, 30 yards before the fire and just stopped people and then just said, we're just going to walk 5 or 6, 10 paces and then stop again. And just want you to sense what you see here, or even sense in this area. And you may sum that up in a word, you may have a sentence. And then we'll do it again. So we did it about 3 or 4 times, just as you approach the fire. And it kind of created this kind of really nice introduction and this nice pace to coming to the fire. And then we just paused and said, does anybody want to say anything? And it was really quite remarkable. That sort of delaying that approach, you just get to the fire, was very powerful, actually. And then we reversed it. So saying, this has not only been something you face to get the warmth on your face, we turn around and say, get the warmth on your back. So it's a memory now. So we did the same thing coming away from the fire, which is very, very interesting, actually, and just finding different ways to, perhaps stuff that we've regularly done, but just to adopt or just add or delay or remove a certain sense, whether that's touch or sight or sound, may actually have a profound effect on what people are taking away from that moment, really.
Ian, thank you so much for these amazing and creative ways that people can engage people with their sermons, with their communication, so that it stays with them and they can grow in their walk with Jesus. So while you're preparing your amazing message full of creative, impactful ways to get it to stick in the hearts and minds of your people, the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities can help you do all kinds of other things that still need to be done in your church community. In fact, that's why they exist, because there's so many things that it takes to run a church, right? And so if you're thinking about things like legal and finance and HR, and maybe you're thinking about pension plans for your team, or you're thinking about ways to get health insurance if you're a small team, that's really what the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities is all about. They have resources and tools for their members as an extension of your own team. The membership just starts at around $270, so it's really accessible, but you wouldn't believe how many tools and resources they have about things that you may not actually have as resources on your own team. So go to cccc.org to check out all that they have to offer you as resource, tool, and support to help you do the charitable work that you do in Canada. Thanks so much for checking out Word Made Digital Tutorials. We'll see you on the next one.